Foundation for Advanced Training in Plant Breeding, abbreviated at ATPBR, is a non-profit organization. We aim to promote advanced technology in plant breeding and develop qualified plant breeders who would complement and add value to the existing system. ATPBR organizes professional training, workshop, and various awareness sessions to build required competencies of the global standard. And we also organize annual conference named as 5-Way Farming Conference in different locations across India. Now, I would like to take a privilege to introduce our moderator, Dr. Sharan Angadi, sir. He is a plant geneticist and breeder who worked for 17 years for public sector and 22 years with the private sector. He worked with Nunam Seed in Netherlands, where he served as head of breeding for Asia Pacific and global coordinator for pepper, spanning several countries in Asia, Europe, and America. After his retirement, he's continued providing his R&D advice to seed companies in India and abroad. Besides serving on various expert bodies, recently APSA has honored him with the most influential plant breeding researcher for horticulture crop award the year 2021. I'd like to request Sharan sir to please take the floor.
Good morning, everyone. Can all of you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for those introductory words about Dr. Tikku and about me also. I know you were all in for a very informative and very knowledgeable lecture by Dr. Tikku, whom I know for past several years. But before introducing him for a serious talk, I would like to start on a lighter note. And when introducing such people, there's a risk. Once I was introducing him somewhere, and people there said, "We know him, but who are you?" So now Aparna has told, I think that question may not be raised. And then there is also a saying about introduction. No, those who need an introduction do not deserve an introduction, and those who deserve an introduction, they do not need an introduction. I think you agree. The second one applies to Dr. Tikku because he's so well known. Introducing him is a kind of difficult thing, especially for me, because I know him from 1978 onwards, and then we have done several things important professionally, personally. We have been members of several bodies. We're also in Lions Club. That was interesting. I will quote few things from there. We were together in Lions Club. He was doing a lot of humanitarian and philanthropic activities there. And we used to make fun saying the only animal in the world who is not afraid of lions is, can anyone guess? Can anyone take a guess? The only animal which is not afraid of a lion is, okay, I'll tell you. Lioness.
Lioness.
The wife of a lion. I think somebody said, Sharad said that, I think. Yeah, so that's why we used to call our wives as lion ladies, not lionesses. So our association, as I said, goes back to 1978. That's when I first time met Dr. Tikku, when we were in the ASRB for a selection interview. And then the association has gone on. We were at IHR for a while. Then in private sector, we have worked together on several aspects. So I learned a lot from him. He's a very, not only a great scientist, but also a very humanitarian and mentor kind of person. Several people have been mentored by him. So briefly introduce him. He is into the experience of research as a breeder, teacher, research and development manager for the past 54 years, almost 5.5 decades. He served as global research lead, vegetables, and later also as global technology development lead at Advanta from 2008 till 2012, 4 years. Prior to that, he was vice president and Asia Pacific lead for vegetable research, global research lead for peppers, and member of global vegetable development leadership team at Syngenta from 1998 till 2008, 10 years, a decade. And then global tomato, outdoor bush breeding and okra breeding lead in Pioneer, 88 to 97. Prior to that, 20 years, he was with ICR breeding tomatoes and teaching. He has published over 50 research and review papers, guided 2 PhD and 3 MSc students in their research for the award of their degrees. He has developed several national and internationally released varieties and hybrids as a breeder of tomato and okra, many of which have been market leaders in their respective segments, including first bacterial wilt resistant tomato varieties and hybrids in India. He has led research that helped develop benchmark hybrids like Abhinav in tomato at Syngenta and Radhika in okra at Advanta. He is a fellow of Society for Promotion of Horticulture, Bangalore, member of research advisory committees of ICAR, APSA, steering committee member of ASRT, that is ACS Solanaceous Roundtable, and a supervisory board member, Access to Seed Index, Netherlands. He has been recently awarded Excellence in Translational Research by the Society for Plant Biochemistry and Biotechnology, New Delhi, and Springer. It happened in 2021, 2 years ago. So with these few introductory words, I would like to, it's my privilege and honor to introduce Dr. Tikku. So now over to you, Dr. Tikkuji.
Thank you, Sharan. That was very kind of you. Am I audible? Sometimes the net.
Yes, it is clear. We can hear you.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Thanks, and thank you, Aparna, and ATPBR for this opportunity. And I think this started about I think a few months back when Sharad was talking about some processing tomatoes. And I said, there is a lot of history in processing where few genes made. Sorry, I hear some. Can I go on?
Yeah, please, Jagdish bhai, please mute your thing. You are being heard.
Yeah, please.
Those who are not
Can everybody be on mute? Then it's easier.
Please.
So they said, processing tomatoes, India mein nahi hai, etc., etc. And then I said, no, there is a long history on how processing tomatoes happen. And he said, then why don't you speak on it? I said, why not? So that is how this thing happened. So let me, without any further ado, let me share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So I thought I will speak on breeding tomatoes. Basically, its history is even more interesting than what has happened later. So I wanted to kind of talk about that story, which I heard when I went to USA first time in 1982. Was sitting with the father of tomato genetics, Dr. Charlie Rick, in his lab in UC Davis, California. And he talked about how this potent, processing industry happened and who bred those, and how California became like 90% of American processing tomatoes come from that state for a long, long time. And then where we are and what could be done. Before that, a quick, tomato is a nutritionally very important crop. We don't realize that. And one of the scientists at National Cancer Institute has said that consuming 2 or more servings of tomato sauce per week is associated with a reduced risk of developing prostate cancer by 30%. Because tomatoes are known to have lycopene, which is an antioxidant, and anti-cancerous properties. It has a lot of vitamin C, acidity also, besides other factors. So medical science is now focusing on metabolomes as a future of patient treatment. This is another subject, but in a short, what is happening today in the US and some other advanced countries is that they have found that there's a pain. Just crocin is not a painkiller, or combiflan is a painkiller to which every patient having pain will respond. So they found that everybody has a different metabolome. So the gut, the metabolome is very, very different. So they need to do so now what they are doing is they do a statistical study of the metabolomes of patients, which is available on the net. And then based on that, and how people have responded to various medicines, the doctors are starting to prescribe medicine. And tomato is looking to becoming a nutritious capsule to be given to the patients. And the other thing is why we get addicted to tomato is its umami taste. It's common to foods that contain high level of alpha glutamate, inosinic acid, and guanosine monophosphate. So these are things that make you getting that particular flavor that comes with tomato, and similarly with, for every Chinese cabbage, spinach, everything has a special flavor. So tomato is an addictive, and more we breed for its flavor and other qualities, that addiction can make people like tomatoes even more. So with that kind of background, this is how I am going to speak on, and the context why we are speaking on this. A few definitions I thought would be very important. Then where it began and the lessons we learned from that. The global scenario of processing tomatoes today, agronomy and key factors that helped in making that processing happen, breeding of varieties and traits over time, and then possible scenarios to increase processing production, especially with reference to India. On the right is a picture of a mechanically harvested tomato in California. So, global tomato importance as a crop, is because I will show that with some data. And there was a study done. That's the last but one row there, because processing has not taken root in India. Although 20 million metric tons of tomato are grown from 810,000 hectares, 25 tons per hectare is our average productivity, which is very low, and only 150,000 tons are processed. So it's about 1% of our this thing is processed, while as other countries like USA, China, they process nearly 70% of their tomatoes. India.
Screen is not available, boss.
Sorry?
Screen is your presentation is not visible.
Is it not visible now?
If
Wait
they
a
pin,
second.
sir, if they will pin, then it will appear.
Yeah,
It has
I had
come in the
done.
panel. It's visible, but it is in the panel, very small. I think
No,
you have to
can I
make
do
some adjustment, make it bigger.
now?
No,
Is it there?
it still has one of the panel thing for me. Others I don't know.
No, sir. Click, right click,
It is
and there is a
visible,
pin,
sir.
Right click.
and there is a not for you,
It
sir.
is visible, sir.
Others, they can right click, and there is a
No,
icon of pin. If you press
For
on
me,
it,
I see full
Sir,
screen.
full screen is visible, sir.
Yes, sir, it is visible.
yeah, it's okay.
Is it full screen visible?
Yes, visible, sir. Ah, sir.
Okay. So I'm saying that only 1% of our tomatoes get processed, and it has been this case for the last as many years as I know. It has not really increased, although lately a lot of companies are now coming. India is importing canned tomato and sauce worth $20.6 million in 2019, which was a 146% increase over 2018. So nearly 72% of the imports were from China, followed by USA, Spain, Italy, and Chile. China had special, I'll go to that a little later. Because of not having enough processing, we lose 40 to 50% of the produce in glut season, which many of you must have known that, you hear, especially February to April time, you hear Kolar farmers throwing the fruits on the ground because they don't get enough price. Because farm grade prices fall to a level that even the harvesting costs cannot be recovered, so they just allow it to be, go under the trucks that pass on the road. Current varieties are not specifically bred for processing quality, though many of them have one or the other traits, but specifically we don't breed for processing in India because the market has not been developed very well. And because of all these reasons, I think it was November 24, 20, Dr. Sadashiv and Dr. under the chairmanship of Dr. D.P. Ray, former VC of Odisha University, there was a brainstorming session by NAS on need for breeding tomatoes suitable for processing. And many of us were involved in presenting papers in that call, and then developing so that is available now under NAS. There's a folder available on the outcome of that, and some of those I will refer to here. Thanks to Dr. Sadashiv for having shared that with me at that, and I also wanted it again, and he gave it to me. So coming to that, before that, I mean, just a few definitions for some who may not know. Ketchup is made with tomato, sugar, vinegar, acetic acid, and spices. And ketchup is cold and it is never served hot. Sauce is made from tomatoes, oil, meat, or vegetable stock, spices, nerves, never uses vinegar. All varieties of sauces are served hot. You can get these sauces on the shelf also. You can make them at home also. But they need to be served hot, or you can put your vegetables, meat into that sauce and then cook them. So it has a tangy kind of taste. Juice isn't cooked and it is more watery than sauce. They do cold pressing now these days so that the lycopene and other vitamins, etc., are not degraded. So juice. So you need, for this you need a different variety. So you need a variety with a little more juice than the normal tomato and ketchup. Puree is a blended mixture of cooked and strained tomatoes created by mixing ripe tomatoes, salt and citric acid, and lemon juice, etc., for preservation. Paste is a thick paste made by cooking tomatoes for several hours to reduce the water content. This is how China took away almost 20% of California tomatoes. They now make paste for export, and part of it comes to India. And this paste is basically dehydrating it to a level that they can transport it in large, these boxes and kind of bags, plastic and bags. They transport it around the world. So those are the one, and I think no breeding of processing tomatoes can be talked about without referring to Gaudi Hanna. Gaudi Hanna was known as Jack Hanna. He was a University of California professor and he bred tomatoes. He won the John Scott Award in 1976 for his development of tomato variety capable of being machine harvested. It was called VF145 and came to be known as the first square tomato. Though it was not square, it was kind of a little oblongish shaped, one side pointed. And because it was blockier, it was not rolling off the conveyor belts when we harvest. I need to explain that when we go into actual mechanical harvesting. So and this is a very interesting period, and he says in his interview to one Dickman that he first thought of a machine harvestable tomato in 1942 and finally got to start working on it in late 1950s. And when his concept, he talked about it with people in the University of California, Davis, and also to the canning industry that, why can't we breed a tomato that can be harvested by a machine? And they used to laugh at him and they thought that he's mad and did not listen to it. So he started keeping shut. But he then went into talking to an agricultural engineer called Corey, who was an agricultural engineer in UC Davis, and they started talking about how we can. So what he needed was easy removal. He needed a plant type that has no vine, so it doesn't need staking. It can grow on the ground and have more fruits coming together. At that time, what was happening is labor was becoming expensive in California. And the government was thinking of stopping labor coming from Mexico to California. And that was causing problem to the canners because the labor was coming from Mexico to harvest them because they were daily paid and relatively cheaper. The existing harvesters that were already developed for asparagus and other lettuce were not working for tomato. So he joined with engineer Kobe Lorenzen to develop first harvester with Ernest Blackwelder. Blackwelder used to make tractors, and he was one of the first ones who by 1963 really made workable machines. And this has led to the industry that is just in USA today, it's $1.3 billion worth, the tomato processing that happens there. So I just show one is his picture, Jack Hanna, and the right side is the source of the interview. It is in the UC Davis library. There's a very nice interview with him, with his wife, and also Charlie Rick. 2-3 things that one learns from that is that his wife, in her interview, said that Jack used to I used to be, she said that I used to be a breakfast widow because Jack used to leave my home at 3 o'clock to drive to the field and then work there. And then one guy came to meet me in the morning one day, and where is Jack? And she said he's working. And he looked at her very inquisitively, thinking that Jack is doing something else. So she said, I was a breakfast widow, but I have no regrets because of the honors that Jack got later on. So that teaches you dedication about his work. Second was Charlie Rick. Charlie Rick said that he used to discuss with Charlie Jack Hanna about his project, and Charlie gave him a lot of wild germplasm, and the jointless gene came from one of those jointless germplasm from, I think it was hirsutum, and which is only a 4 to 5 gram tomatoes, but it has a jointless gene. Jointless gene means the tomato comes off at the end of the pedicel, so it's easier to harvest, but it has to be firm enough not to fall while the plants are being harvested. So they had to find the right gene and the other pleiotropic effects to find the right one. That's called the J2 gene today. So coming to the same thing, so this is Jack in his first kind of mechanical harvester, and this is where it led to. So in his breeding, what he used to do is he used to go to his nursery and he used to throw his fruits on the ground from his hand and find whichever did not break in 1 or 2 throws. He used to survive that plant and then take it to the next. So it took him almost 5 or 6 years before he was able to, from crosses that he made from collections made from New York from a professor called Red Top, and some VF materials that he had developed there, and from that emerged a variety called VF 145. And this is after they were pure line bred after pedigree selection, and then each and every line he did further selection by using this throwing method to look for relative firmness, and so that they could be harvested by the machine. So it took nearly, I think, 7-8 years for them to come out with the first prototype, which was done, and it coincided with the Eisenhower stopping the Mexican labor. So the canning industry, for them, it was a boon that these guys developed these tomatoes. There was one problem: just people thought that these tomatoes did not have much taste because they were having more alcohol insoluble solids and less soluble solids. But that is an old story that is no longer true today. Yeah, of course. The other thing at that time was that I looked at these tomatoes in 1982 actually in the field. They used to do direct seeding, and they used to do 100 and some thousand plants at that time. So I feel here, just take a break, that dedication, observational powers, genes don't show themselves unless one plants in the right place and looks hard. So this is, I think, the genesis of what we call product development today. If we don't do our testing of our hybrids in the hot spots or testing our segregating materials in hot spots, it does not happen. You cannot select the right material. I remember I did it in Pioneer, I did that in Syngenta, I did that in Advanta, and I continue to do that, because without that, gene may be there, you cannot recognize it, and unless you go to the hot spot. And markers are not there for everything, so you need to have a breeder with good eyes, and that goes to the right field. And individual plant selection works if you have the eyes. This is a story in VF36. VF36 was one of the first varieties for fresh market that Jack Hanna developed. And then he was able to grow it in different places, and they wanted some heat tolerance in these tomatoes, because they found that some of these guys wanted to plant a little late, and that they used to catch the heat season. So he kept on looking at individual plant selections from this variety, and developed what was called VF36 dash some number, I forget. And from that came a little bit more heat tolerant varieties. So lastly, convinced if you are, then you can create a market where none existed. Remember that Jack Hanna tried to convince the processors, the professors, the university funders, but they did not. So he and Corey developed it on their own with whatever little funds they had. And he said in an interview that he used to grow 4 or 5 rows extra and earn from those extra rows as a fresh market, and then also put in that. He said that their cost for developing this was about $42,000. But when they said that to the administrators, they laughed at them, and they came out, because by that time they were convinced that this is a great innovation. They said that this is $350,000 by putting all the administrative costs over that. So that is, of course, that happens today also. Now comes to the global tomato. I think you all know that it's supposed to be $1.5 billion by 2024 as per Mordor intelligence, and Asia market is at $330 million, which is 30% of the market. China, South Asia, ASEAN, and all. This slide will be there for you. I think you can go. I don't want to spend more time. But indeterminates have the highest value, because indeterminates in the poly houses in Europe, they sell those hybrids at about $10,000 a kilo. Open field is between $4,000 to $6,000 a kilo. And you can see in India, we are about still at about, I think, $500 a kilo. So those are the various prices, but this shows that how important the and these value-added genetics will continue to drive these revenues. Again, back to California, a few things that I wanted to mention, because they are the #1 processing state and the country in the world. They produce 85% of tomatoes go for processing in California, and 30% of the world's processing tomatoes come from there. So you can see from this, data is a little bit too close, but I have tried to highlight declining acreage since 2000. Then that is because China took away 20% from that time, and government helped Chinese farmers to develop that processing industry in the northwest of China, in the area where it's cold and dry. And they are now exporters of tomato with that infusion by the government. Yields have now been stable since 2012-13, because I think there is not much happening in terms of increasing yield, but you can see that the area has not increased much now. And of course, the contribution to this is fully by private sector today. From 38 breeders in public sector in 1982, when I went, today there are 4 or 5. The rest is all done by private sector. And practically, there is no hybrid or variety breeding in the public sector, except in one place, that's North Carolina, Asheville. Other places, they just do trade breeding. From 162,000 acres in 66, it went to 229,000 acres. And from yield 19.3 tons to 45.8, 2.37 times growth. That is the average yield. And $95.4 million to $1.1 billion. And India, yields are today 25 tons per hectare. It started with about 9-10 tons per acre, which is 9 to 10 tons per acre, but it started at about 9 tons per hectare 4 decades back. And then $30 million has become $235 million now. But you can see this is India, while as only California is 1.1 billion. So there's a gap that we need to fill. Few traits of processing tomatoes in USA. They are harvested ripe and red. So they are used immediately from the moment of harvest. So only 6 hours. So they need enough firmness to be reaching the processing factory in 6 hours. But they need enough firmness because it's 50,000 pounds that are into one bin there. And for that, you need them to be very, very firm so that they can sustain that distance transportation. And that trait has been used by our fresh market in India for the last, I think, 3 decades now. Since 2000, we have some very firm tomatoes, both in oval and red, which go for processing. And they have much thicker skin than fresh tomatoes so that they can hold. A typical tomato track holds 50,000 pounds of tomato, which is around 300,000 tomatoes. And They don't cover these trucks while they go from farmer to the processor, because it would be too costly to do 40,000 tomato trucks, each carrying 50,000 tomatoes, too much labor and cost, and then it would create heat, which would damage the tomatoes. Every rule, of course, interestingly, as we say that, it's commonly said, if tastes good, it must be bad for you. But scientific studies have now clearly demonstrated that tomatoes are not only delicious and versatile, but loaded with health benefits. So they say get canned and get healthy. Lycopene is better absorbed when it is cooked, is the conclusion of a few studies. So conclusion, so if anybody wants, there is a website where you can see more details of this. And then I think it is time to, from that, what happened. A quick video, please. Can you see? This is what Jack Hanna's breeding led to. Can you see? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Please. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
This is how so there are a lot of traits which I'll talk about now that make this possible. You can see that the tractor is removing the tomatoes from the ground, and then it goes onto a conveyor belt where they shake it, and that jointless gene helps them to shake the tomatoes free. That goes into a bin below, and the vines then fall back on the ground. So empty vines. That is again because of the jointless gene. So the vines are falling back on the ground and tomatoes are harvested. So this is a quick view of how it happens. And then what made, there were agronomic and breeding traits, I think, that made it happen. I'll go to the traits later. The agronomy was direct seeded to transplants today, of course. Today, because hybrids have now overtaken the OP varieties, and it becomes very expensive to grow hybrid seed. Do direct seeding with hybrid seeds. They have successfully moved to transplants, and with that, the professional seedling transplant growers have become an entity. It's a business that has developed over the years. Mulching and drip irrigation to save operational costs. Seed coating is part of this. All seeds are coated so that they get uniform germination and protection till they are transplanted. Close monitoring by farmers, and they have extension advisors, and that's why they developed what's called California Tomato Growers Association in California somewhere in the 40s. But they helped this processing tomatoes immensely. I'll talk about it later. Afrel was used for once over harvest. What they do is, around when 30% fruits are ripe and the others are different ripening stages, they use Afrel 250 ppm to 500 ppm. They are spraying, and 15 days later, the machines come and harvest these tomatoes at once. And so another agronomic experiment that was done today, and that's today carried on, deep ploughing, which helped in deep penetration of the roots, and they found 25% increase of the same varieties and then hybrids. So the genetic potential is gained because of better agronomy. And then a little bit about California tomato, because I think this has relevance to what we need to do in India today. It was started in 1947. They are involved in assistant growers with establishing a fair price and help them with the agronomy of all aspects of their production, and also help them marketing. So what they do is, before sowing, there is a tripartite agreement between the growers association, the farmer, and the processor. They know which area, which hybrid does well, and they help the farmers to choose the right hybrid, and then they help the farmer with the agronomy. California University Davis has agronomy extension advisors. They run around in their cars around the whole California state and help farmers predict their problems and help in IPM and other things. So the mission for them was to provide economic, public policy, and business leadership for the benefit of growers and the industry. These are the 7 pillars on which they work. They bargain for the prices, etc. They help in communication to affect the farmers' business through meetings, etc. Promotion of the products and wellness, they help in that. They help in food safety measures and management techniques. They help in advocacy because farmers are only 2% of the total. So they need to go sometimes to Washington to go for certain problems that they face. And for taxation, transportation, trade, and land use. One of the things Jack Hanna said that, they used to core these tomatoes before processing, and core was getting more labor. The hybrid, variety that we have 440 had hardly had a little core. CTGA helped in going to Washington and making the law change that core is not necessary if the core is below this millimeter. So this is the kind of professional expertise we need if we want to go into processing industry in India. And then, of course, they do measure the quality and make sure that the quality is maintained, because the processors are bound to give them prices by the TSS, the viscosity that the tomato samples that they get into the factory. So what happens is the tomato trucks go to the factory. Before that, they go to a sampler. It's an automatic sampler where they take the samples, and within about 15 minutes, that result of the sample for acidity, sugar, and viscosity and color goes to the processor. Based on that, they give them the price. And of course, they help in making research projects with the breeders in the private sector, and as well as for trade breeding in the government. And again, you can see that in the top countries, we are not there. USA, Italy, China, Spain are the top countries, and each one has 12, 8, and some 6 or 7 processing groups. We can see on the right hand, we already have 17 processing companies, smaller scale, but we are only processing about 150,000 tons of tomatoes. So we need our country to go into, doing breeding and taking care of a lot of other problems that will help processing industry in our country. Coming to India scenario, you can see compared to China and USA, we are half of China and 1/4 of USA in terms of yield. Area today is nearly 2.5 times, and yield gains are about 2.7 times. I already said that. But you can also see that bigger gains came, which will show in the next slide. Area has started to decline now. It is not going 2 to 3% annually. I think it's kind of plateauing. And USA supplies, as I said, 30% of the global processing. Current status of production, I think briefly, I must take care of the time. Oh, it's already 11. Briefly, that the area-wise, the countries are different, and the yield-wise, top states are different. So we have a mismatch because of the type of varieties and the expertise that we go. So we need to spread out the gains of research. And on the processing and value addition front, we are nowhere in the top 10 countries. We as you see in this one, China has 0.8 billion worth of tomato for processing export, but we don't do that. And this is where we need to increase our processing. Quickly, 2 circles here, not to, so only that how hybrids from 1980-91, when the first hybrids came, Rupali, Rashmi, and etc., they started moving from open varieties to hybrids. And then by 2001 to 2011, when TY genetics from more firm, EB tolerance, BWR, indeterminate hybrids, all kinds of traits came in. These are the hybrids that have come into the market from different places. So you can see the hybrid have average yields have increased. But I think the spread of agronomy is not all over. That's why, although some farmers do take 70 tons per hectare, but our averages are only 25 tons. And now coming to the processing, we have, you can see the prices are high only in May, June, July. But rest of the time, the farmers get at farm grade less than 5 rupees, 10 rupees per kilo. It used to be earlier 2-3 rupees. And the problem is that at this stage, we are not using enough, we are only using for fresh market. We need to move November to May harvest need to divert to processing. And we need to give farmers at least 5.5 rupees a kilo. But processing people, I think, are not willing at the moment to give more than 4 rupees. But I think we need to increase their average yield by better agronomy, because the genetics is already there, so that they can get the fair price. Now the traits, the jointless, as I said, it helps moving the fruit away from the pedestal by shaking. And J2 was the one where there was not much of pleiotropic effects like cracking, etc. So that is the one used in. Then self-pruning. Self-pruning is the one that does not allow the plant to grow like indeterminate. It self-prunes itself, so it kind of hugs the ground. They keep on dichotomous branches, and then they get all the almost concentrated flowering happens. And then you have uniform ripening gene where there is no green shoulder, so you get a uniform red ripening color on the tomato. Then in the that self-pruning gene, you will need the determinate one, and that has helped us to get the concentrated fruit maturity, because concentrated flowering happens, and that has come from the dwarfing genetics. These combined with the determinate have led to today's, these non-staked cultivars that don't need any staking. And especially if you go in India, only north, in Ludhiana, etc., some side there is non-staked, and also in some parts of Bihar, but they do multiple harvests. These are done once over harvesting. The other genes that have been used are old gold crimson, which improves the color of the tomato. Single fruit thrust for heterosis has been recently talked about by Israel, Dr. Danny Zamir. It seems to be a single gene that increases, gives more heterosis. And then anthocyanin less, because that is linked to a TM2 gene. And then resistance to radial and concentric reactants. Firmness, best to say that it's inheritance in intermediate. So you need both the hybrids to have firmness if you want a good firm tomato, whether it is for fresh market or whether it is for processing tomatoes. And this firmness comes from alcohol insoluble solids being, so lignins and celluloses, etc., need to be more. That helps in reducing the ripening process, where ethylene is developed. So low polygalacturous enzyme activity reduces the degradation of the tomatoes. So you need this low ethylene production for these kind of tomatoes. Root knot nematode has been bred, one of the first ones to be used for markers by using gel electrophoresis in the 80s. I have seen this in peto seeds. They were using gel electrophores to select for MI2, and because it is linked with a gene called peroxidase 10. And this is on chromosome 6. Then, of course, there is TMV gene. This is linked with an anthocyanin-less gene, which you can recognize even at the seedling stage. So it's very easy on those days, especially when you didn't need the markers. You could combine these and get TMV into your TY and bacterial wilt background. AVRDC Taiwan have used this very effectively to give multiple disease resistance varieties. EBR came mostly from Asheville, North Carolina. I think we were using that in Pioneer, and I think IARI has used it in their breeding. Dr. Sadashiv has lots of lines and hybrids that have EB and bacterial wilt resistance. So these traits have been used to develop varieties that can withstand the fungal diseases, and as a result, totally you can save yield, and as a result, get more yield per unit area. This is now today's situation, that you can have totally early blight and TY resistant material on the left, and susceptible ones can almost lose their foliage, etc. So these are traits that have helped us to develop the right material. The other important trait that has now gone into this, especially at IHR and also at AVRDC, which is WVC Taiwan, bacterial wilt resistance. It's a global challenge, and sources of resistance were Hawaii materials, V48 and CRA 66 selection A. I have worked a lot on this along with my PhD students. We got our first bacterial wilt varieties BWR1, BWR5 from that, and later I was able to get a hybrid in Pioneer. It's called Avatar 7711. First, I would say commercial bacterial wilt hybrid that has good firmness, and I think those kind of materials can still be used towards going into processing. And then there is different types of resistances in that. We won't go into that. There are a lot of bacterial wilt resistant materials released by IHR, US, KAU, Orissa Agriculture, and private sector today in the fresh market mostly, but some of them have processing traits. And then as we go for more and more extended sowing season, we will need bacterial leaf spot. This genetics is also available in the archives of materials coming from Florida University, and I'm sure these can be utilized for producing. And the TY, this is how in 1997, Avinash was released by Syngenta, and selection 22 was a major OP variety. So you can see that at juvenile stage, Avinash was definitely vigorous and did not have very high levels of actual tolerance to TY because it did not have TY genes, but it had adult plant resistance. But today, there are minimum 2 to 3 genes, TY2, TY3, etc., available in the tomatoes that are giving it full resistance to TY. And this will help the processing tomatoes because, as I will say later, I won't go into this. There are now 6 genes distributed on the chromosome. We know exactly where they are on the chromosomes, 4, 5, then 6. Sorry, 3, 4, 6, 10, and 11. They are spread out. And these TY6 especially is now at Florida University giving some excellent results, and we need to utilize it in our both fresh market and processing breeding. And these genes have been practically deployed in the market. And this is a slide thanks to Bob Mullins. I got it in 2010 when I was giving a lecture. And Abhinav was a benchmark in the tomato industry in India, not only for firmness, but also for TY resistance and also better heat tolerance. So it became the summer segment, which replaced Avinash, and was also having a couple of years when TY gene was monitored with a marker. So I remember that we had a molecular marker lab in which I started in 2003 sometime in Pune, and that delivered a lot of marker assisted breeding aid to the breeders in India. Today, I'm sure IRIs, IHR, IR, IIVR, they're all using these genes for marker assisted selection in their crops. So now, where do we go from here? Can we create a 25% processing tomato situation by 2030? This is my kind of a, you have to take, as I said, you don't have to wait for people to say what you want to do. This is what I feel we should do by 2030. So can we go from hectares of 16,000 to 187,000 out of the, which means we can then increase the seed value. If the seed value goes to 12.5 million, I think the processing industry will find it easier to breed for tomatoes, because at 1 million, it does not allow investment to go into this. So processing actual versus total is by 25, maybe 2.4%. We would like it to be 26% and keep going like the other countries to 50-60% in the next decade or so. So this would mean around 166 crores of seed value in 2030, which means it's an investment worth doing today by the private seed sector to bid for better processing varieties. Now, how do we increase this? I think there are 2 ways. One is with the current genetic potential that we have, basically sowing happens September to December, and the January to April is the harvesting period, that red period. And January to, this is for short-term goals. Agronomy, drip irrigation and ground culture instead of the indeterminate culture, because indeterminate culture means almost 80,000 to 1 lakh rupees per unit area cost for them per hectare. But that they cannot sell it for 4 rupees a kilo at that. So if we reduce the cultivation cost to ground culture, I think that will help in making harvests cheaper, cultivation cheaper. And January to March harvest is when, as I showed, especially February, March, April, the costs are lower. So we January to April, I think 50 to 30% of the fruit should get diverted to processing factory. But this needs a lot of government incentives, how to move this and how to get farmers trained, how to get the processing industry interested. Key states, I feel, will be Karnataka, Maharashtra, AP, Chhattisgarh, MP, and TN, because they have large acreages of tomato and they have the largest extended sowing season possible. In the north, there is only one sowing season, which is sow in March and harvest somewhere in June, July, August. That's it. But in these states, you can extend. And for that to happen long term, by 2030, we need to breed nematode, tospor resistance, and solve the Tiranga problem. TSS should be 5 to 5%, and extend this by adding heat tolerance. If we add more heat tolerance, this extension of, so we have 9 months. Why do I say this? If we have a 9-month harvesting period, the tomato factories don't have to worry about now washing it out and trying to find other crops to, process. So this will make it more efficient and cost efficient for processing companies. And those are the traits I gave one by one. These are the combined traits that we need: GBNV, root knot, drought tolerance. Of course, there is drought tolerant material available from IHR, a program that I started long back, and there is varieties. And there is a material happening in California. Dr. Roger Chatelet is working on SCTNs, developing drought tolerant material, and is quite advanced stage at now. So we need to use these genes, and that's why we need a PPP kind of work, so that can deliver 5 to 7 years from now something new. And heat tolerance, very quick. There are so many traits that govern heat tolerance: style protrusion, style length, membrane stability, pollen viability, fruit setting, fruit number, fruit weight, number of flower. This is a paper that I read recently on heat tolerance. And I know that dominance epistasis is good. If we do good work in the field, we have good material, we can marker assisted breeding for other traits. Heat tolerance, we select in the right hotspot, we will be able to create good heat tolerant material. And there need to be work on heterotic grouping for including TY, etc. genes and heat tolerance. In India, I know that Dr. Prasanna at IHR, Dr. J. Kumar at IIVR, Dr. Srivastav at BHU have done excellent work on heat tolerance, and we should be working with private sector, because we already have hybrids that go February sowing and get harvested in April, May, June. So we need to work together to extend that to later on, because if we go beyond June, we will need to have very high foliage tolerance also built into this. So it's a long-term breeding program that we need to do. As I said, there is a gene called single overdominant gene for yield. It's called single fruit truss. It's taken out from the SP gene by Israel, Danny Zamir and his team. But my personal experience so far haven't been very successful, but I thought I should let the audience know, and they can work. This is available from TGRC. And then to increase flavor, there is now QTLs available at the INRA work on sourness, firmness, color, aroma, color, sweetness, etc. There are 5 QTLs available. One needs to work with INRA, and maybe there are others who have worked on it. And QTLs at INRA. Then Chivil whiskey, that was the first high sugar line, it had about 16% TSS. Rick sugar lines were developed by Charlie Rick with a TSS of over 6.5% from there. But these are available at TGRC. But because it involves a lot of work, because as you go for more higher TSS, you lose yield. So you need a lot of work to get to that average 5.5 to 6% TSS in the firm processing type tomatoes that will come over once over harvest. So that work needs to be done. It is not done. And as I said earlier, the processing tomato breeding at IHR, besides what I developed in 1987, selection 11, it had, I think, jointless gene, etc. But two very excellent hybrids have been developed by Dr. Sadashiv. They are called Arka Apeksha and Arka Vishesh. Processing industries, 5 have tested it, and they have the potential to produce 75, 80 tons per hectare. And these have been found worth using for processing. And also, Peter Hansen's varieties that have developed from his program at ABRDC Taiwan. There are two, 1706, 1707. They have been found very good for processing. In 2020-21, there was an initiative taken by WVC Taiwan along with INB Seeds in Bangalore. Praveen Nujibal and his team were kind enough to provide their field for staked and non-staked trial, and they found 5, 6 hybrids and varieties that were good enough for processing. I was glad that one of our hybrids was also 4719 was also found useful. They all need to be now done on a large scale testing and taken forward to. So processing tomatoes, my ambition is, can we create a Heinz in India? Why do I say that? If you go to processing tomatoes that we buy from the shelf, so I don't want to name, that wouldn't be good. But if you open the processing ketchup bottle and you open it, and quickly it will flow out. But if you open a Heinz bottle, it will not flow out easily. You need to tap it at the back to get that paste out. This is because they have always bred for very high viscosity that comes from alcohol insoluble solids. Alcohol insoluble solids improve the firmness in the tomato and also give you taste. Just 2 more slides. Sorry? 2 more slides. Hello? Sharan,
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Please go
I'm
ahead.
saying that they are the #1, processing company, and I think we need to create a Heinz in India by providing all the necessary, the varieties, the agronomy, the farmers, and I feel this is where an FPO system is the best possibility. And similarly, I found recently, United Genetics in India is part of Kagome. They have started claiming functional claims on tomato. They mentioned that they have good, they can reduce cholesterol, they can have good for health. And they have now also included the GABA protein that was developed by a person that I know very well, Chimpe-san. They have Sana Tech company. They developed a genetically edited tomato which has oval elongated fruits, which are good for putting in the processing thing, and then claim, because GABA reduces mental stress. So this is the 2 areas: simple processing company with better quality and nutritional quality plus processing in juices and in sauces and ketchup. So we are not far from what is required today in the processing. These are the traits we require in processing, and the green ones are already there. The red ones, you can reduce the tomato fruit, but you can get more fruit per number. Deep red, jointless in all the processing variety, concentrated fruit maturity, prolonged wine, 5.5 TSS, more than 12 grams per 100 gram fresh weight of lycopene, more than 14 grams for viscosity, lycopene in the paste, 12 to 14, it is the centimeters traveled by the the paste in 30 seconds. That is how viscosity is measured. So we need that. See, what it also helps is when you make a juice of a normal tomato, in about half an hour, you get the serum and the rest of the solids separated. When you have more alcohol insoluble salts and good viscosity, that serum separation happens after much longer duration. So you get a better juice quality and ketchup quality. So you need multiple disease resistance. TOLCV as basic resistance plus bacterial wilt, verticillium, fusarium, foliage tolerance, and heat tolerance. All those says I already said. And 75 to 80 tons on an average from 25. How do we move there? So the lessons we have learned, not a win-win situation. Farmers still poor yield. Processor can't pay higher process and cannot pay higher for good product quality. Seed companies, because processing market is low priority today. Majority growers are small, 1.2 acres. Contract farming is not working because farmers, if they get better price, they don't honor the contract. They go to the fresh market. So this is a problem that needs to be solved. Stake culture is too expensive. Inadequate knowledge transfer is there. No proper wide area testing in ground culture on what we have already is not there. So we need, just like what WBC said, we need to do it on an India using extension and using the public and private sector. In the KVKs could be one of them. And then, so here are the final recommendations. So MDR and high yield in processing tomatoes with concentrated fruit maturity, jointless pedicel, and high lycopene and Brix of above 5%. Variety is suited for extended growing season, as I explained a few minutes back, and adopting genetic editing to get GABA and other type of mutations possible, just like the Sicilian Rouge tomato that Sanatec produced. Can we do similar things on existing tomatoes by doing gene editing and making them better quality? Indian tomato processing sector to look at value-added products, including those for, to be able to pay more for nutraceutical ones, sun-dried tomatoes, whole fruit canning besides the ketchup and paste. Karnataka, MP, CG, AP and TN states need to be used with government support to make a PPP possible so that we can do large-scale trialing. We need to create our own CTGA. So is FPO the way? How do we do that is something that we do need to brainstorm and make it happen. And of course, to gain constant knowledge, I think we need, from breeding, the farming, the processing, they need to attend these symposia that happen regularly under International Society of Horticultural Science, under the World Processing Tomato Center, Fruit Logistica, where they honor quality, where you can listen to what is latest happening in these fields. And so ground culture will be the key. And I have one last submission, that we may not be able to get machine harvest because our farmers are small. I understand that tomatoes in Japan, they have come out with harvesters for 3 to 4 acres. So 3 to 4 hectares, they could be one. The other is, this is a Muniappa, my assistant in the field in 1980s at IHR. So we worked on the concentrated fruit maturity and jointless. And we used to shake this plant. So we had varieties and hybrids. My student, Dr. J.C. Rajput, did his PhD on this. And we were able to harvest it once over. So my idea at that time was, it was published also, that, can we grow varieties that can be, instead of multiple pick, you can go to the field with a sickle, you can pick up the whole tomato and shake it into a bin, carry on with 3 to 4 people in a row, and they carry on this in a 2 acre, 3 acre farm. And I think this, to begin with, can lead to finally in 10 years where we can afford these mechanical harvesters. I think that is my last one, and I acknowledge the information that was shared with me by Dr. Sadashiv, Dr. Peter Hansen, and Dr. Bindu Madhav from WVC Taiwan. He is having some other roles now. And I hope the sun will rise on the processing industry of India. I thank you for your patient listening. I am ready for any questions. Sorry, taking about 9 minutes more than what I was supposed to take. Thank you. Maybe I hope I have done justice to what I wanted to say. And
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Tikuzi. It was definitely an enlightening and very, very comprehensive, covering every aspect of processing tomato. And more than me saying it, I think I would like to read the comment Dr. Partha Dasgupta made. In the message, he says it's a discourse of very high standard and high value to researchers and other stakeholders. A lot of food for thought for the policymakers and the industry. Kudos to ATPBR for organizing this webinar, and of course to Dr. Tiku for doing full justice to it. It says it all. I'm sure all 43 participants, all the 43 participants listened to your talk with rapt attention as much as I did and many others. Very informative, very, very knowledgeable. So now it is open for questions.
thank you very much, Partha, especially.
Some people have raised hands.
Yeah. Aparna, would you like to open those queues for asking questions?
Is Aparna there? Yeah, she's there.
She's there, she's there.
I'm here. Mr. Tirtha, yeah, Mr. Tirtha has raised the hand since a long time. Maybe he wanted to ask something. Mr. Tirtha Chattopadhyay. Tiku sir, you may like to close your screen, share screen.
Oh, I don't know. Oh, wait a second.
There is also Thippe Swami and Jagdish Kumar. They also raised hands.
Have I stopped sharing? Is it okay?
Then
Yes, sir, please.
you stop sharing.
Dr. Jagdish, you can ask. Yes, please. Dr. Jagdish.
Yeah, sir, it's a very nice presentation to listen to you on this processing tomatoes. So, just I have
Thank
one
you.
query on this. Can we restrict to any cropping duration for tomato in open field conditions so that we can harvest at 120 days or 130 days? Some in north of India. I'm particularly talking for the UP.
You know, if you want to extend the season in the north, you need a lot of other genetics that is today not available. You know, like आपका season छोटा है, so you can definitely harvest in one season and you can have 120 days maturity crops after transplanting. You can probably have even 110 days maturity because you have genetics is available for that. But if you want to extend, you need to know what are the other traits that you will need. What are the disease resistances that will come into force? Because here, if you want to go for extending the season by sowing in, say, December, then you need a lot of cold tolerance. At the germination level, or you need a cold tolerance at the initial seedling level. So you need a lot of genes from cold tolerance to heat tolerance. So if you can do that, then only you can extend in the northern hemisphere, I mean, northern states. But in, you know, like if you go MP and down, they have a longer growing season. Abhi bhi, आप अगर कर्नाटका and महाराष्ट्र में जाएंगे, the farmers that make more money, they sow in January, February and March, because then they get at least 20 rupees at the farm gate. So उसके लिए आज भी lot of traits are available, may not be exactly in a processing type, but they are available in the hybrids that they are growing. Many of the, you know, today I can say safely that 95% or 96% of the hybrids that are in the market, they come from the hybrids that are bred by the private sector over this, because OPs is no longer the main variety grown by the farmers. It might be very, very low, but I think it's almost hybrid now. So traits are needed. it's possible, then you need to work very hard on looking at those traits and developing a program, and then developing not only a program, having agronomists with you, having engineers with you. You'll have to go into the detailing of that. I can't totally answer this here, but I think I would say the short term is where it is already possible. We need to extend our genetics there, do that, and then go over. You should, to me, focus on what are the problems today the farmers are facing.
Yes, sir.
Yes, please.
One
Anybody
small,
else?
little small, sir. Can we
Yes, sir.
can we integrate with rainy season tomato? Rainy season tomato, especially for Kharif.
You see, if you grow your crop in the rainy season, you must have mold resistance, you must have phytophthora resistance, you must have a lot of fruit rot resistance also. Those genes are available in the species, in the material that Cornell University has developed, in the material that IIHR has developed. But then we need to work together to develop that's what I was saying on 6th March in a industry, private sector, public sector seminar that I attended in Delhi with DG had chaired. So there are a few things that we have mentioned in that as to do, and I hope it will be followed by, actually action taken, conference talks so that some projects can be developed. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Rajiv Tagar,
Yes, please.
please ask the question.
Thank you very much. Is my voice audible, sir?
Hi, Rajiv.
Sir, is my voice audible, sir?
Yes,
Is my
yes,
voice
please.
audible?
Yes, yes, yes.
Thank you, Dr. Teku, thank you very much. It's as usual, you are a star. I mean, this was such a inspiring, and personally, I learned so much, right? And thanks, Aparna. You guys are absolutely mind-blowing. Very good job. So I have two questions. Just the first one is, when we talk about processing, and we see that ketchup and sauce, they are very, they're very popular abroad. But in India, people go for the fresh things. And some of the reasons could be that, we suspect something like that. That's my personal, little bit also. You say, okay, why not go for the fresh and why go for the preservatives and stuff? So one is, what is your take on these preservative things and how to, bring out that sort of a dogma from our minds that look, it's okay to go for purees, to use them. All that processing before it's fine, but eventually market is important. And the second thing is, abroad, I have been eating, a lot of things when you eat food and you say there is chana available. And I saw the label, and what they said was that this is the technology from DRDO India. And what they've done is that without any preservative, they're giving cooked food. This could be chana or dal or vegetable, all cooked and dispersed. So, and the next question would be, is it possible to send all that processed tomato without additional processing any preservative? That's the way this technology is being adopted upon. So this marketing angle and this preservative angle and this DRDO, so could you please tell on that? Thank you.
Yes, please. Thank you for your kind words, Rajiv. Number one, you said, why not take fresh? Number one, fresh not available throughout the year. Fresh you cannot, because you cannot grow throughout the year. Of course, then you need to transport it from long distances. The second, there is nothing wrong with processing if it is done properly. And as I said, lycopene becomes better absorbable if it is heated and it is processed. Many studies are there. In these studies, papers, references can be found on that CGPA that I had referred to. So this the third thing is that we are importing, as I showed you the value, we are importing more than $25 million worth of and last 3 years, just in 1 year, 146% increase. So which means the middle class, especially the persons who are into it, we have 100 crore people. Sorry, what is that? We have about 10 million, 100 million, I think, people who are in the range who want to eat and discover. There are hundreds of recipes that you can do with these various canned tomatoes. Whole canned tomatoes are there. Then on the other hand, you said about this preservative. We need to work on. See, I eat a jam. It's called Sain Dalfur, a jam of not tomato but other fruits. It has no preservative. They use grape juice as a preservative in that. So they have a technology. It's a French, sold in India, but it is a French technology. And I know that a lot of them are now using some kind of radiation also. So I know that as the demand for such more, say, what should say, enviro friendly or more healthier thing, people are working. I may not be knowing, I don't know, because I know that these days Viva करके एक company है, they are advertising it as healthier. Kagome is advertising. I don't think there are many countries who take care of their citizens' health as much as Japanese do. They approved Sanatec GABA protein, which is GE, and they are soft claiming on their bottles, Kagome, that it is healthier, it can reduce. So it all depends on the quality of the processing that we do, which can overcome the hurdles that you mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Zakir Hussain.
Hi, Dr. Zakir sir. Nice that you are here. I can't teach you. You have to teach me.
Good morning, sir. May I chip in?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Looking forward to.
Yeah, I am Dr. Chattopadhyay calling from Bihar Agriculture University, Bhagalpur.
Yes, sir.
So, first of all, sir, I thank you very much for your very informative talk covering nearly all aspects of processing industries and how to develop it. So, I would like to add, sir, one or two points over here. The first one is one of our experience regarding breeding. We are running projects on developing tomatoes specifically suited for processing purpose, and we have used one of the genes like the natural mutant allele of ovid gene, so which is a fruit elongation shape related gene, and we have found that this mutant allele is very well correlated with the firmness of the fruit. So that is one information that we recommend the use of this ovid allele for food firmness. And the second thing is, sir, for processing purpose, what we are actually lacking at our university or at our state, that the proper PPP approach, that the public sector and private sector should join their hands so that we can share the materials between us towards a holistic development. If you kindly suggest some of the ways, practical ways through which that can actually be achieved, sir, that will be very nice. So that's all from my side, sir.
Thank you. And for that ovid gene, I know that it is there. What I'm trying to say is that if you have a marker, you could use it if you are crossing a oval, square, round, or an elongated fruit with a round one. Then you could use the F2 for using the marker and take out the ovate and these oval types only and reject the round type because they will segregate. So that way you are increasing your efficiency. That is how you can use this marker. So that is great. No two opinions about that. But you need to use right at the seedling stage so that it is efficient. Yes. The second part, you said PPP. I have said enough about that during the just 6th March. I was in Delhi, and now there is a serious attempt directly directed by the DG. He was very clear that industry is the 4th pillar without which we cannot do our research and make it reach the farmer. So which was very happy to hear that. And under horticultural sciences, we had some 7-8 action points for vegetable crops, for fruit crops. I hope that they will take it forward and then all this will happen. I mean, the question is, there has to be a trust deficit between the industry and the public sector. We need to remove that by more talking to each other and solving that. So all I can say is you have to initiate those meetings with the right people from the private sector and decide on what areas you want to work on in Bihar.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Okay, sir. We are from our state government also. We are having a very large initiative regarding protected cultivation and particularly breeding for the processing lines You know that state government works in Krishi road map approach, and we are trying to have this kind of projects and this kind of programs focusing mainly protected cultivation and processing type tomatoes to be developed over there.
Very
So
good.
thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
I
Thank
take
you.
your permission to disturb you time to time with my queries.
Anytime. Anytime.
thank,
Welcome.
thank, thank you very much, sir. And one personal request, sir. I didn't get the presentation, so if you could have please shared it, sir.
I think it will
So
be on
that
the
will be an asset for our group, sir.
Aparna, it will be on the website.
Yes, sir, it will be on the
Sir, I
website.
have my email address. I will be mailing you to your email,
Okay. Okay.
your official email. So if you can please send, sir.
Okay. Aparna,
Thank you
Dr.
very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Jain and Dr. Gaurav Sahu.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. A very informative lecture, sir. I am Zakir Hussain Kali.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, with respect to, I have one or two submissions with respect to Dr. Jage's query. What we have observed that if we are able to coincide the flowering time to convert into fruiting, so 23 to 25-degree temperature range, that will be the most appropriate. So what is happening in North India, it starts from the second fortnight of October and whole November. So the ultimate outcome will be the very high yield, but it requires resistance to bipartite virus, particularly tomato leaf curl virus.
Yes. आपके north में bipartite virus is resistance is required, and now the combination you already have those combination of genes that work there. So it's a
Definitely, PY3 will be mandatory if we are really want to enhance the yield. If yield is not good, then definitely the prices issues will be there.
So you need to now edit into all the processing traits I mentioned and get a hybrid ready for that. So
definitely,
as I said,
the second
or anywhere we extend the season, we will need different traits at different times. So those need to be identified, and then a breeding plan be prepared to prepare the two parents that will ultimately give you the hybrid that you need.
Definitely, the second submission is that the apprehension that we are not have varieties or hybrid in the processing suitability. It's I think it's not completely correct, because we don't have any genetic variability in India. All whatever crop improvement program we are doing with the import of the germplasm, and majority of the imported lines, they are of processing one. So if when we are evaluating, majority of our lines and hybrids, they are meeting that standards for the bricks and acidity, which is required mandatory. That's a basic one. So it's not that there is no dearth of available processing material.
Please don't get me wrong. I already mentioned some of the hybrids that are and lines that are having the traits, and some processing companies already agreed that they have the right traits. So the question is now, I said in the short term, I said we need to have proper testing in the ground culture, no staking, only ground culture, so that reducing the cost of the farmer so that he can sell it at a right price. By staking, he cannot sell it at 5 rupees a kilo today. So he will lose the money. So materials are available, but we need to get them together into a whole. Today, as I said in that one last slide, we are already almost there. Somewhere something may be missing, somewhere but getting all together into few entities and then testing something made, say, like heat tolerance, etc. आपके पास भी अच्छा heat tolerant material है, but whether it is in the exact processing background or not. As far as material is concerned for germplasm, it is available freely all over the world. One can, whether you are in public sector or private sector, you can get it from the world without having to break any laws. And hybrids themselves are a germplasm that can be used to break out. It will take 5 to 6 years before somebody gets something. Finally, it needs good breeding, good molecular breeding, good agronomy to come up with a time-bound project and deliver. So no two questions about what you said. The materials are there, and you can extend by developing in the north September, October sowing to getting March harvested. Yes, but उसमें cold tolerance की भी जरूरत है.
So Sharad Deshpande has the hand. Sharad
Yes.
sir.
Sir,
Yes.
while in Syngenta, you were developing the hybrids and I was marketing them.
Yeah.
Earlier tomato hybrids which came into market, they're all fleshy and processing types, right,
Yeah.
sir? Suddenly, the seed industry realized the demand for juicy, acidic and sambar types.
Yeah.
And the new hybrids came into market were all having the
Yeah.
green shoulder and the acidic taste.
Yeah.
Now you are proposing a push for the processing types. Do you think the Indian market is ready to buy the processed tomatoes? Because in Karnataka, for example, at our home also, we don't use any processed tomato. Only in restaurants that we get served processed tomato. But we prefer to use the fresh tomatoes only.
I think.
So your take on this?
So I think the study that I referred, that was National Academy of Science based. It was Dr. Mahapatra was after that has got all these details, and we are importing today ketchup. Then why do we import? Why not produce our own processing tomatoes? Secondly, I think it may not be that some people, it may be that some people don't like to use process, but tomato ketchup, the tomato sauce, etc. It's a very common in cities, and the total requirement is enough to warrant that we do breed for processing. The points that Rajiv Taggar raised, so you can move towards making them relatively more healthier by using techniques that doesn't use more preservative, doesn't use more salt. There are today methods available that can help that. But not breeding for processing. I'm not saying that everything will move to processing. What I said is that period between like I think around February to June, when everything farmer loses money. So why not transfer that to processing so that they make the money and people get what they want? That's all my submission.
Sir, with your permission, may I add something over here?
Okay.
Yes, sir, we had a unique opportunity this time. There was a Kisan Mela at our university, regional Kisan Mela, and we surveyed around 150 consumers and farmers regarding their preference on tomatoes. We had some of the different colored lines, pink, yellow, orange, and these lines, and as well as some of the juicy and fleshy types. So we observed that there is also a very good demand for this juicy one, not only the fleshy type, because people say that अब टमाटर में वो स्वाद नहीं रहा सर, सब बहुत ज्यादा fleshy आता है, खट्टापन घट गया है. So what I suggest that the product for processing has also a scope for diversification. Apart from ketchup and this sauce, can we think of about this tomato soup or tomato juice? Simply because nowadays a lot of work is being carried out on water soluble tomato concentrates. It's being used for medicinal purpose also. So your opinion in this regard?
In my recommendation, I have mentioned that we need processors to look at also other value added. Sun-dried tomato hai, juices hai. Then people might want high flavonoid tomatoes. Aajkal purple tomatoes bhi hai. So we need to get into value addition so that farmers also earn money. But for that value addition, processors and the consumers have to be ready to pay more. See, if you go to Japan, there are two strawberries on the counter. One is higher soluble solids. The Japanese customer pays double for that per bag than the old strawberry variety. So the question is, this comes as the people's incomes increase, will definitely come there. We know that our we have there is a matrix of Indian market by which we know that about there are 10 crore people who are price agnostic. They need variability, they need, so they can buy a 200 kilo 200 rupees kilo tomato also. They can buy 100 rupee one watermelon because it is seedless. So those things are happening. In the next 10 years, we will see value added also entering our shelves in vegetables and fruits like tomato, just like what has happened in apple. In 2003, when the first time these Fuji and other Gala apples came, they were taking only 10% shelf space and selling at twice the price. Today they take 90% space because consumers understood the quality and understood the value of that. So people are really, so as you go to the market with better and better stuff and branding and the communication is done to the consumers, I'm sure those things will increase. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Mr. Sundaraj has raised the hand. Sundaraj, sir.
Yeah. Sir, very good presentation.
Thank you.
You have covered almost everything with statistics and all. We have worked together for the processing type earlier also.
Yeah.
And we have acquired some of the germplasm from US. Yeah. In this point, the processing industry point.
Sorry?
In India
Can't hear
is
you.
concerned. Our population, most of
Sorry,
our...
can't hear you.
Your voice is getting disconnected from the bench.
Very poor population is...
Your voice.
Hello?
Your voice is breaking.
Yes.
Now it is clear?
Yes.
Sir, are you hearing?
Yes.
Sir, this our country, our poor population is more when poor population more, and the consumer, we go to the market, 1 kg, for 1 kg they need around 9 to 10 fruits.
Yes.
But the processing, if you use the processing ketchup and these type of things, very costlier than the fresh produce.
Yeah.
That is one thing. Second thing is, China is dumping lot of paste into India at very lower price.
Yes.
Very lower price. So therefore, what is the scope of processing industry here? Because we are all the consumer awareness of using the ketchup is very, very low in this country.
I think the consumer awareness is increasing by the day, and China dumping today may not be continuously happening because processing industry is also aware. As I showed you, we have 17 companies doing tomato processing already. So they will not just shut shop and go. So I think as they go and finally they will come to a pricing point which is win for farmer and the processor and also the consumer. But more costly because one bottle of ketchup takes 3 to 4 times more tomato to dry and hydrate and to make that happen. So we have to be able to pay more for that. It is concentrated. Yeah. And you need just a few drops of ketchup, not full tomato, to do that. So it's not a question that I can really answer more than that. Yeah. Anybody else? Thanks.
So last question, maybe we can take it from Mr. Gurumurthy.
Okay.
Hello, sir. This is Gurumurthy from Namdari Seeds.
Yes, please.
Thanks for your nice presentation, sir. I would have expected, means a breeder, more breeding related topics. My first question is, sir, in the 56 years, you said yield has increased only 2.7 times. And
yes.
now
average
the price what the processing companies are offering is also less. So we need to increase the yield. How much yield increase we have to increase, sir? Now the rate of increase is very less.
As I said, we have to have agronomy reaching all farmers. Only few farmers taking 70 tons per hectare will not do. Almost every farmer going to 50 tons per hectare is needed. Isn't it?
No, genetically, sir.
Genetically, you will increase the yield by increasing heat tolerance, so you will probably get more yield during the heat season. Otherwise, you have to find new genes. As I said, SFT was one. You have to find new genes from the. We don't do enough work with the wild relatives, because if you just go and look at a pimpinellifolium, work at the number of fruits and into 5 grams, it can deliver more than 10 kilos per plant, whereas we reach about 4 to 5 kilos at the most. So how do we get those traits? So you need to have a little more biomass, but at the same time, for processing, it has to be within the determinate level, because you don't want to spend on the you don't want to spend staking, so you need to determine it. So you need to increase fruit number. I think I talked about the traits, because you can't talk about all breeding in this kind of a talk. The idea was, what are the traits required and how they are inherited. And most of the traits I talked about, there are markers. And marker aided selection can be a separate talk, how to do that. But the whatever has been happened today is through the breeding of those traits into the hybrids that are today possible. But if you have a specific question on breeding related that probably you want an answer from, I will be glad.
Yes, sir. You said the SFT gene, but SFT produces very 1 or 2 flowers per plant. So for a private company, that is a very lose-lose situation. They cannot produce.
No. That's what I think. If you understand what Danny Zamir says about SFT and what he says he has developed, I have not seen the material. If you use SFT as such, I think you need to cross it with several of your determinate types and then see what happens in the F1. I will go back to something that I say every time. By looking at Aishwarya Rai's parents, you can never predict Aishwarya Rai. So please read Danny Zamir's paper on SFT. You need to cross it with and find the combining ability that can change that trait into giving you heterosis. The second part is there are now a lot of heirloom germplasm where you have trusses. Each truss has more than 50, 60 flowers, but all of them do not become a fruit. So how do we make the right crosses and then combine it to make that happen? Then if you put that in a determinate background, as I said, Jack Hanna talked about things that were not possible. So he never took a no for an answer. So I think only thing is, to take no for an answer in a private sector becomes difficult, because then you need somebody to support you for 5 to 6 years to do that job, because you might need 2 years just to understand how SFT can be used, or any other such trait that can increase the fruit number per plant. Finally, fruit number and average fruit weight combined give you the heterosis that you need.
Thank you, sir.
There are questions in the chat box, but I think we are really getting late with our time. So I request every participant to drop your question. Maybe I'll compile and send it to Tiku sir, and they will answer. No, he will answer, and I will post it on the website. Will that be okay, Tiku sir?
I'll be glad to. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Now I request Sharan sir to please close the session.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Aparna, and it has been a very good discussion. That enlightening talk. And all the people who participated with interest, listened to the talk, asked questions. I hope they have got appropriate answers for their questions. And also, as Dr. Aparna suggested, please do post your questions, which can be individually answered by Dr. Thank you very much. Dr. Aparna, would you like to announce about the next webinar?
No, not yet, sir.
Not yet. Okay. So thanks all of you, all the 140 participants. Now I think there are only 88, 87 people are slowly leaving. Thank you very much. Have a nice day and a nice weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you.